The first scream did not come from the living. It came from the mirror. They said it was just an antique, a collector's piece, the kind you find buried in dust and memories. But when Ed Warren carried it into the old Connecticut farmhouse, the air changed. It was as if something unseen had been waiting for the glass to return home. Lorraine felt it before she saw it. Her heart slowed, her breath shortened, and for the briefest second, she could hear something whispering her name from the reflection. Not her own voice, but something using it. The temperature dropped so suddenly that her breath floated in the air like smoke. "Ed," she murmured, "it's awake." The light bulbs flickered once, twice, and then shattered all at once. The mirror pulsed with a dim silver glow, faint as the last light of dusk. From behind the reflection, something pressed. A shadow that shouldn't have been there. A face trying to push through. The year was 1964, and that was the first night the Warrens met the Mirror of Malachi. It was said to belong to a priest who lost his faith and invited something else inside him. When he died, the mirror was sealed, buried with his body. But someone had dug it up, thinking it a relic of beauty. The church had burned a week later. No one connected the two. No one except the Warrens. Lorraine touched the mirror's surface. The glass was cold as bone. For a split second, her reflection blinked and smiled back, her own face, but wrong. The eyes were black. She fell unconscious. Ed rushed to her side, his hands trembling as he pulled her away. "Lorraine, open your eyes!" She gasped back to life, screaming a single word that would haunt him for years. "It's coming." Then silence. The mirror went still, and Ed covered it in a white cloth. But the shadow that had smiled behind the glass was not gone. It was only waiting, patient, hungry, aware. 2 decades passed. The Warrens grew older. Their daughter Judy grew into a woman, and the mirror became just another artifact, sealed in their basement museum among dozens of cursed objects. Lorraine never went near it again. She swore she could still feel it watching. But evil is not bound by distance. It waits for bloodline. It waits for invitation. And in 1986, that invitation came. Pennsylvania, the Smurl family's home, stood like a wounded animal in the middle of an ordinary street. Yellow siding, cracked windows, a swing set that moved on its own when the air was still. Jack and Janet Smurl had moved here for peace. What they found was the sound of someone else breathing in their rooms at night. It began with knocking, small, rhythmic, almost polite. Then came the voices, then the smells of rot, of burning, a black stain spreading across the ceiling that no amount of scrubbing could erase. The priest who blessed the house left shaking, muttering that the walls listened too closely. Janet Smurl didn't believe in ghosts, but one night, as she folded laundry, she felt a presence behind her. Tall, heavy, and cold. When she turned, there was nothing. But in the hallway mirror, a shadow stood, not behind her reflection, but inside it. Across the state, Lorraine woke from a nightmare with her chest heaving. She had seen the same house. She had seen the same mirror. The mirror she thought they had locked away forever. Something had found its way out. Ed was hesitant. His heart was weaker now, his faith tested by years of horror. But when their daughter Judy came to them, pleading, "Mom, Dad, the dreams are getting worse," he knew this was no ordinary haunting. The bloodline was connected. The demon had learned patience. They arrived at the Smurl home in the dead of winter. Snow fell like ash. The windows were dark, except for one flicker. The soft orange of a candle in the upstairs hall. The moment Lorraine stepped inside, she whispered, "It's here." A sound answered. A low hum, like a choir humming backwards. Every picture frame rattled. The temperature plummeted. Jack Smurl stepped forward. "You believe us now?" Ed nodded slowly, setting his crucifix on the table. No one should live here another night. But it was too late. The door behind them slammed shut on its own, locking itself. The lights died, and in the reflection of the window, Lorraine saw it again. That smiling face from decades ago. The mirror had found them once more, and this time, it wasn't alone. The night they arrived, the house seemed alive. Every creak in the wood carried a pulse. Every gust of wind felt like breathing. Lorraine stood in the hallway, her eyes half closed, tracing something only she could see. The wallpaper peeled in the shape of faces. The house was whispering. Not words, but emotions. Terror, envy, hunger. Judy watched her mother in silence. "Mom, what is it saying?" Lorraine's voice came like an echo from another world. It remembers every scream that's ever touched these walls. Downstairs, Ed was setting up the cameras. His hands shook slightly. Not from cold, but from the weight of memory. He'd seen too many homes like this, perfect on the outside, rotting with despair within. He set the crucifix on a table, muttered a prayer, and then looked up at the ceiling. He heard footsteps, slow, dragging, deliberate. But everyone else was in the room. Janet froze, clutching her daughter's hand. "That's the attic," she whispered. "We never go up there after dark." Ed took a flashlight and started toward the stairs. Each step groaned like a confession. The air grew thicker, the smell of mildew giving way to something metallic. Blood, faint and sweet. Halfway up, he paused. The light flickered. For a moment, the beam caught something carved into the wood of the railing. Symbols, crude and burned, repeating over and over like a chant. He sees through the glass. Ed tightened his grip. "Lorraine," he called, but his voice sounded muffled as though swallowed by the house itself. When he reached the attic door, the handle was cold enough to burn. He turned it slowly. Inside, it was pitch black. He swept the flashlight across boxes and dust, then stopped. At the far end stood a mirror. It wasn't the same mirror. Not exactly. This one was larger, older, framed in black iron instead of silver. But the moment he saw it, his heart dropped. The design at the corners, the spiraled cross, the pattern of the priest's crest. It was the same. The mirror of Malachi had made another body for itself. A whisper slid through the dark, low and wet, like words bubbling up through blood. Ed, he froze. The voice was Lorraine's, but she wasn't there. He turned slowly and saw her reflection in the glass, her eyes hollow, her lips stretched into a smile far too wide. "Come closer," the reflection said. "She misses you." The real Lorraine screamed downstairs. The lights exploded. Ed stumbled backward, tumbling down the stairs as the attic door slammed shut behind him. The crucifix he'd left on the table lay upside down. By morning, the Warrens realized the haunting was spreading faster than they could contain it. Each member of the Smurl family had begun to change. Janet woke with bruises shaped like hands. Jack spoke in his sleep. Not his own words, but fragments of Latin prayers and growls. Even the children complained of the man in the mirror who asked to play with them when everyone was asleep. Lorraine knew what was happening. It wasn't just a haunting. It was an infestation, The spirit wasn't bound to a single object anymore. It had rooted itself into the house, into their thoughts, into the very light. And Judy was seeing things no one else could. At breakfast, she stared into her spoon, watching her reflection flicker like an old film reel. "Dad," she whispered, "what if it's using our reflections to learn us?" Ed swallowed hard. Then it already knows too much. He tried to contact the church, but every time he picked up the phone, the line went dead. On the third attempt, a voice answered, not the priest's, but a child's voice, soft and distant. "Mr. Warren," it said, "you can't bless what doesn't have a soul." Then laughter, high, sharp, and mechanical. And the line went dead again. That night, Lorraine prayed. She prayed until her voice broke. The house groaned back, each prayer answered with a new noise. A thud in the walls, a sob from the floorboards, the sound of fingernails dragging slowly along glass. At 3:07 a.m., the witching hour, the mirror in the hallway began to hum. Its surface rippled like water. From inside, faces pressed against the glass. Too many to count, some distorted, others crying. They weren't all strangers. Lorraine saw her own reflection among them. So did Judy, so did Janet. Each reflection moved just a fraction too slow, smiling a second after the real one stopped. And then, together, all the reflections spoke in one voice. Deep, layered, ancient. You buried the priest, but not his promise. You sealed the glass, but not the hunger. Faith burns like a candle, and candles go out. The house plunged into darkness. Outside, snow began to fall. But it wasn't snow, it was ash. By the third night, the house had changed shape. Doors no longer led to where they should. A hallway that once ended in the kitchen now opened into shadows that smelled of rust and rain. The wallpaper breathed. The lights refused to stay lit for more than a few seconds, as though the darkness was learning to feed on electricity. Lorraine woke to the sound of a lullaby. It was an old hymn, one her mother used to sing when she was a child. But the melody was wrong, stretched and bent, each note cracking in the air. She followed it through the hallway, her nightgown brushing along the damp floorboards. The closer she got, the colder it became. The song was coming from the mirror. It stood now at the end of the hall, taller than before, its frame slick with condensation as though it had been breathing. Faces swirled beneath the surface, pressed together like bodies trapped beneath ice. Lorraine reached out a trembling hand. Her reflection didn't move. Instead, it leaned forward. Her voice came from inside the glass, soft and coaxing. "Do you remember the light, Lorraine? The warmth? He can give it back." Lorraine stumbled backward. Who? The reflection smiled. The one who waited when faith forgot. The mirror pulsed. A shape formed behind the reflection. Long arms, black as tar, fingers tapering into nothingness. The glass cracked from the inside, a web of fractures spreading outward like veins. Suddenly, Ed's hands were on her shoulders, yanking her back. The moment she hit the floor, the mirror went silent, still, as if nothing had happened. But she knew what she saw. "Ed," she whispered, "it's not haunting us. It's becoming us." Downstairs, the Smurls were not sleeping. Janet sat at the dining table, her hands shaking, clutching a rosary so tight her palms bled. Jack paced back and forth, muttering to himself, his eyes sunken. His reflection in the window followed half a second behind, lagging, smiling when he didn't. The children screamed in their sleep. Judy entered their room with a candle, her hands trembling. The moment the light touched the walls, something moved. The shadows didn't retreat. They leaned toward her. On the wall above the bed, someone, or something, had drawn symbols in soot. Circles within circles, each containing a single word. Malashai, the name that had haunted her parents decades ago. The name of the priest who invited the darkness in. The candle went out. From the darkness came a whisper. Soft, amused. "I am the first light you ever feared," Judy screamed. Ed burst through the door, the crucifix in one hand, holy water in the other. He splashed it toward the sound. The air hissed like oil on fire. For a split second, a shape appeared. Massive, eyeless, its mouth full of teeth that stretched across its face. Then it was gone. Silence returned, thick, absolute. The next day, Ed prepared the ritual. He knew the church might never arrive. They were on their own now. The Warrens had seen countless entities, but this one was different. It didn't simply haunt. It imitated, replacing one piece of the soul at a time. When Lorraine prayed, she felt it finishing her sentences. When Judy looked into her mirror, her reflection blinked twice. Once for her and once for something else. And when Ed closed his eyes, he heard his own voice whisper back from the dark. "It's too late." At midnight they began. Candles lined the living room, their flames trembling like frightened hearts. Ed held the Bible close to his chest, reading the verses with a voice that quivered between faith and fear. Lorraine circled the room with salt, her hands shaking as she drew protection sigils across the walls. The first sign came fast. The mirrors in the house began to hum, their surfaces rippling like black water. Then came the faces, hundreds of them, some human, some not, all screaming without sound, their mouths stretched wide, their eyes hollow, their bodies crushed against invisible walls. The smell of rot filled the air. Janet dropped to her knees, sobbing. "Make it stop, please." Lorraine grabbed her by the shoulders. "You have to stay strong. It feeds on fear. Don't let it see you break." But it was too late. The floor cracked beneath them, opening like a mouth. A column of cold wind roared upward, throwing Ed backward. The crucifix flew from his hand and landed upside down on the carpet. From the crack in the floor came a voice, deep as thunder, layered with centuries of hate. "You call yourselves keepers of faith," it said. "But every prayer you've spoken feeds me. Every soul you save makes me stronger. You hunt what you cannot destroy." Lorraine screamed over the sound, clutching Ed's hand. "You are not welcome here." The voice laughed. "I never left." The windows shattered. The candles blew out. And for the first time since 1964, the mirror of Malachi was whole again. It rose from the floor, its frame glowing faintly with red light, its glass swirling with shadow and blood. The faces inside began to turn one by one, until only one remained visible. Lorraine's own. Her reflection's eyes opened, black and endless. "Let me out," it whispered. The last thing Lorraine saw before the darkness swallowed her was her own reflection, smiling. Not cruelly, but lovingly, like a mother looking at her child. Then everything went silent. When Lorraine woke, the house was gone. Or maybe she was. She stood in a room of mirrors, thousands of them, stretching endlessly, each one reflecting her from a different angle. In every reflection, something was off. A shadow behind her shoulder, a mouth that moved too late, an eye that didn't blink. She wasn't sure which one was truly her anymore. The night had turned blacker than ink. No stars, no moon, just the wind, moving like something alive through the trees. Inside the Smurl house, Candles shivered in their wax as if afraid to burn. The air tasted like metal and rot. Ed Warren stood at the center of the living room, holding the last crucifix they had. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Across the room, Lorraine lay unconscious, pale, lifeless, her soul half-trapped inside the mirror that pulsed and breathed like a living thing. Judy knelt beside her mother, whispering through tears, "Mom, please wake up. Please." The mirror hummed, low, deep, almost like a heartbeat. Then, from the glass, faces began to surface. One by one, their eyes hollow, their mouths wide open, screaming silently. The reflection of Lorraine appeared among them, her palms pressed against the other side of the glass. "Ed," she cried, her voice muffled, twisted by whatever dimension had claimed her. "It's still here, it never left." Ed stepped forward, raising the crucifix. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." The mirror rippled. A black hand, skeletal, dripping, pushed out of its surface. The air warped around it, vibrating with the sound of 1,000 whispers. The candles dimmed, and the shadows lengthened like liquid. Then came the voice. Deep, layered, ancient. "You prayed for strength," it hissed, "but strength is born from fear, and fear belongs to me." The floor cracked beneath Ed's feet. Black smoke poured out, wrapping around his legs like chains. He gritted his teeth, shouting the prayer louder, but the words felt weak, like glass breaking against stone. Judy screamed, clutching her father's arm. "Dad, stop! It's pulling you in!" "Go!" he shouted back. "Save your mother." But she didn't move. She only held on tighter, tears streaming down her face. "Not without you." For a moment, the house froze. Everything, the sound, the air, even the light, hung still. Inside the mirror, Lorraine looked up, her reflection glowing faintly. "Faith, Edward," she whispered. "Faith isn't spoken, it's believed." Ed's eyes filled with fire. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the silver rosary, the one blessed in Amityville years ago, wrapping it around his arm until the links dug into his skin. He shouted with everything he had left, "By the blood of Christ, I command you back to hell." The crucifix exploded in light. The mirror screamed, a sound not made by anything human. Its surface shattered, spilling darkness like ink. The house shook, walls bleeding, glass flying through the air like razors. Judy shielded her mother as the storm of voices wailed and burned. And then, silence. The mirror fell still. Its surface dimmed, now nothing but fractured glass. Lorraine gasped, air flooding back into her lungs. Ed collapsed beside her, shaking, eyes hollow but alive. Dawn crept slowly through the broken windows, pale light washing over the wreckage. Lorraine looked up weakly. "It's over." Ed nodded, though he didn't believe it. He gathered the mirror shards and sealed them in a wooden chest, locking it 3 times. Days later, back at their museum, the chest sat in the corner of the artifact room. Quiet, harmless, but every night at exactly 3:03 a.m., the temperature around it dropped. The lights flickered, and faint whispers filled the dark. Sometimes they sounded like prayers, sometimes like laughter, and sometimes it was Ed's own voice, whispering from behind the glass, "I never left." If this story chilled your spine, leave a comment and tell us, what would you do if you saw your reflection move when you didn't? Like this video if you felt the fear. Share it with someone who sleeps with the lights off. Subscribe for more haunting tales. where the shadows never rest.